is better than an MT-09, people. I will tell you, it is a freshly updated 2024 version of Yamaha's probably most famous naked bike. I'm Toad Hancock, we are here in Lanzarote, and this is the global press launch of the 2024 model MT-09, and we've been razzing around Lanzarote all day today. I'm going to tell you everything that is new about this bike, and then I'm going to tell you about how it rides. What is this update all about? What this 2024 model really is the final part of the evolution. Now, the MT-09 model, it started out and it was more of a motard. It was like a sort of a supermoto style naked, and it's slowly and sort of steadily been evolving into more of a true roadster, more of an on-road naked sports bike. And this is kind of the end point of that. This is where it becomes that proper roadster, like a street triple. They've changed the geometry, they've changed everything about the thing to make it more of a naked sports bike. But exactly what has changed? I'm going to go through the engine first, because this is where there have been a lot of updates, and this is where I've seen the biggest difference. So there have been tweaks within the gearbox. So we've got new dog teeth to make it a little bit smoother to shift. We've also got a brand new 3rd generation quickshifter fitted. Now, the quickshifter on this bike hasn't always been great, but they've changed it for this year. So now it will quick shift from apparently 15 kph. I'll tell you whether or not it actually does that in a little bit. And it will also allow you to shift up on a partially open throttle and downshift on a closed throttle. So you've got that extra little bit of leeway if you do need to change gear when you've got the throttle partially open. We have got these new funky acoustic vents, which we first saw on the MT-10. They've made it over onto the MT-09. And again, this is one of the ways that motorcycle manufacturers are looking to combat ever more stringent noise regulations, is by making the bikes more aurally entertaining and aurally pleasing to the rider and not everybody else around the bike. We have got more focused riding position. So this is all part of this moving from a motard supermoto style, where it's sat on the back wheel with really long travel suspension at the front, to a roadster where it's a bit more pointy. The new riding position basically just shifts you forward a bit, shifts your bum up and your hands forward, and puts a bit more weight over the front end. We've got revised suspension, so the new springs in the front suspension are slightly stiffer. They put a new linkage on the rear shock absorber. The frame has also been tweaked, so the engine bracket is now a little bit stiffer, and the frame overall around the headstock has been made a little bit stiffer as well, and that's been done to improve the response and the turning performance of the bike. Another big change, and this is one that you will really notice if you've ever ridden an MT-09, is they have changed the master cylinder on the bike. So they have gone from the previous master cylinder, which was just an axially mounted master cylinder. They've gone for a Brembo radially mounted master cylinder. The final kind of big change to the bike is we've got completely revised switch gears and a brand new TFT. So the TFT is larger, so it's a 5-inch TFT. It's much clearer, much easier to use, and the menus are much easier to navigate. The switch gear itself is also much better than it was before. I'm going to go through the rest of it now. So first and foremost, I had an MT-09 in 2019 or 2020 when the single headlight, round headlight version came out, you know, the bike that basically nobody liked. And I actually grew to enjoy the styling of it. It wasn't the prettiest thing on the planet, but Yamaha's generally, unless it's an R1 or an R1M, bye-bye, they generally aren't the prettiest bikes on the planet. But I sort of learned to love the styling of it. That's one thing that Yamaha have done for this year. They've fixed the styling, and I think what they basically did was they just listened to customer feedback, they looked at social media, and they saw the sort of reception that the previous generation bike was getting, and it wasn't 100% positive. People generally thought it looked a bit gawky and it looked a bit weird. They've given it a new face, so we've still got kind of like a centrally mounted headlight, but it's 2-unit LED with a dip and a high beam built in there, and then you've got some LED DRLs that kind of flank it underneath to give it this kind of, almost looks like a Centurion's mask to me when I look at the front end, but it is much easier on the eye. They've also tightened up the lines from the fuel tank through to the headlight, so it kind of looks a bit more taut, a little bit more muscular, and a little bit more clean and finished, and just generally nicer all around. They've also changed the rear seat unit and some other visual tweaks. Riding it today, we've been razzing around Lanzarote. It is horrendously windy here, but we've had a ball, as you always will on an MT-09, and before I say anything else, this has still definitely got that fun factor that the MT-09 and the MT-07 and the MT-10 have got. They've all got this DNA where they just make you smile, they make you want to go out and just have an absolute ball on a bike. It's definitely still got that. What Yamaha have done is they've just refined it like they did with the previous update, and they've just made it better in pretty much every single department. One of those departments is the front brake. Like I said, I had one of these for a long time as a long-term test bike, and the front brake was ridiculously sharp. You didn't have to put any weight on the lever whatsoever, and you dialed in quite a lot of braking power very, very quickly, and it could sometimes catch you out. The new Brembo master cylinder that Yamaha have put on this thing is much more progressive. You've still got tons and tons of power, absolutely loads of power, but it's just so much more progressive. You can be so much more accurate with your braking into a corner and your trail braking, and those little last minute emergency brakes that you need to make when somebody walks out in a car park in front of you, they don't sort of like stop the bike and make you nearly drop it like they used to, which is a very, very good thing. Sticking with the right hand handlebar, Yamaha have also smartened up the throttle connections. So the throttle connection on the previous generation bike, just in that first little bit of opening of the throttle, could be a little bit jerky, it could be a little bit clumsy, and picking up the throttle when you're coming out of a roundabout or out of a hairpin bend, it wouldn't make you look like the best rider in the world, because it would kind of be that on-off throttle sort of kangarooing that you get. This is much, much better. The throttle connection is really, really good. So you've got the riding modes that you've always got. You've got 2 user modes, you've got a rain mode, a street mode, and a sport mode. Obviously the sport mode is the sharpest. I basically rode most of today in the street mode because not a huge step between the engine power and the throttle connection from street to sport, and I found actually that in the street mode it actually wheelied a bit better, which brings the power down to engine power number 2, so 1 lower than it is in sport, and it just lift the front much, much easier. I've got to talk about the technology, because this is another thing that I used to pull the hair that I haven't got out over the way that Yamaha arranged the switch cubes and the interface that you use when you're riding the bike to adjust all the menus. They had this horrible little jog wheel on the right hand handlebar, and it was impossible to use it in gloves, and I found it impossible to use it without gloves, because you had to scroll through the menu and push the button in to select the one that you wanted. And basically what you'd always do is when you went to push it, you'd roll it back up and you'd change the menu. That's gone, and I'm so happy about that. It's the best thing Yamaha have done for the model. What you've now got on the left-hand switch cube, you've got like a 4-way joystick that you push in to select it, and you've got a back button, and you've got a mode button over this side, so instead of scrolling through, you just press mode and scroll through them. Your cruise controls all the way over here. The switch cube feels super, super premium, very nicely laid out and very, very tactile. There is one element of the switch cube which I don't like, and it is the indicator switch, which is like this big old rocker switch, and they've done that because they've incorporated self-cancelling indicators on the model, which is great. Just give us the self-cancelling indicators with a normal rocker switch. What they've also done is this feature where you can really lightly tap the indicator button, and the indicator will only flash 3 times if you just need to change lanes on the motorway. The trouble is, you've got to be so gentle pressing the indicator button, you can generally never do it. You always just end up leaving it on. Yeah, it's answering a question that nobody asked in my mind. Just give us a normal indicator stalk with self-cancelling indicators. Yamaha, that would be fine. Another thing that I did kind of find a little bit strange was the clutch on my bike felt very, very grabby, and the bite point of the clutch was right at the end of the travel. So you had to, from the handlebar, you had to go a long, long way out to get the clutch to engage. These bikes have got 1,000 kilometers on them, and all of those kilometers have basically been done full chat round Lanzarote, most of the time on the back wheel. So it could be to do with that. I don't know. I'd want to get a bike back in the UK that hasn't been ridden by hooligans for a week, and just to see if it's the same. But the clutch could be a bit grabby because you're that far out into the travel of the lever, all of a sudden you find the bite point and it's gone. The new quickshifter, this is a big deal as well, because the previous generation quickshifters, some of them haven't been great. They could be a bit jerky, they could be a bit aggressive, and they wouldn't always shift when you wanted them to. This one is much better. I don't fully agree that it will shift from 15 kph, because sometimes when I was riding around town I was doing 25 kph and I'd be asking it to shift and it wouldn't, and I'd have to blip the throttle to go through. But the on throttle and the on throttle shifting, which is the new level 3 quick shifter that Yamaha have developed, is much, much better, and that does work all of the time, every time, flawlessly and faultlessly. The gears engage easier anyway. If you're clutchless shifting and not using the quick shifter, the new extra dog teeth that we've got in the gearbox on the new MT-09 does mean that grabbing that next gear without the quick shifter is much easier and much more precise. I'm going to talk about the engine noise because Yamaha have put a lot of work into the stuff that's gone up here, so I'm just going to explain it very quickly. The airbox of the bike is below there, we all know that. Previously there were 3 inlet trumpets into the airbox that pointed up underneath and sucked the air into the engine. What Yamaha have done, they've taken one of those inlet trumpets out and they've made the other 2 inlet trumpets that remain much bigger, and they're kind of uneven lengths and uneven volumes. They sit directly below these little vents here. So when you crank on the throttle, and a triple is always a great sounding engine, when you crank on the throttle, you can hear the exhaust, which is bouncing up from the road beneath you, up into your lug holes, and you can hear the induction howl from underneath there. So what it's doing, it's increasing your pleasure of hearing the engine without broadcasting it to the entire valley that you're riding through. And a toad's top tip for the MT-09, if you change gear at 5,000 RPM, you get a lovely little pop out of the exhaust, which is just very, very nice. Very quickly, the new suspension, yeah, they've stiffened the front, they've changed the linkage. Overall, I didn't feel a massive difference. I think the thing that I'm feeling more than the suspension is the change to the riding position. It's put more weight on the front end of the bike, and it means that when you come out of a corner and you accelerate really, really hard in 2nd and 3rd gear, you don't get that sort of head wobbling as the front goes light that you used to get with the previous generation bike. The stiffer springs and the new linkage, they kind of just make it feel a little bit more refined over lumps and bumps and potholes. But overall, it's a plus, and like I said at the beginning of the video, Yamaha have set out to just make this better in pretty much every single way, and that's pretty much what they've done, aside from a few niggles. So to sum up the MT-09, it's just a more refined, pleasurable bike to ride. It's still not as serious and focused as a Street Triple or as a Street Triple R or Street Triple RS, but it's definitely got a sort of a fun factor that the Street Triple hasn't got. The Street Triple, when you get on it, it is quite a serious bike, and you know it's track focused, and you can feel the DNA of the Daytona in there, and it kind of makes you just want to take it easy on it a little bit. You've got to be a little bit careful with it because it's got that real race bred DNA. This doesn't have it. It's got this just a fun factor. It just wants to go out, it wants to do wheelies, it wants to do skids, and it just wants you to have a good time and to put a smile on your face, and it still 100% does that. These things are £10,100 for the stock MT-09. There are 3 colours available. They'll be landing in dealers in March 2024. Basically, if you've always wanted to own an MT-09, there hasn't ever been a better time to own one, because this is the best one that they've ever made to date, and it's a bloody good bike. Anyway, that is enough from me, folks. I've been Toad from Visordown. If you like that video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of our latest videos. And for all the latest news, reviews and motorcycle features, get yourself over to visordown.com. Thank you.